we saw a preview of what the Nets are going to look like on a night in, night out basis in the postseason when they are game planning and they come with a strategy and when the players have reason to go 150%.
Ben Simmons gets mercilessly booed, and then the home team gets mercilessly booed. They were not out of boos in this game. It was a boo fest in Philadelphia. And small game James himself has made an appearance. And the Philly fans and Joel Embiid and Doc Rivers and the rest probably all were driving home from that game last night and were thinking to themselves, you know, they said this about him. We wanted to believe it was going to be different. It's like the girl that cheats on everybody. You get with her and then she cheats on you and you're like, oh, geez, I thought it was going to be different with me.
Yeah, I've had that happen.
No different. Philadelphia, they put a uniform on the guy, but you can't change small game James. And Brooklyn just went in there and without Ben Simmons, absolutely emasculated the Philadelphia 76ers. Your thoughts?
Everyone on the Sixers is on notice. I saw your text to me last night, Chris. I saw your tweets, and I had to do everything in my power to hold back from responding just to keep it for today's show because I got to tell you, man, last night's game, first of all, we'll talk about James Harden, but it's everything else that's on my mind, too. It's like Tobias Harris, terrible defense, looks unmotivated, keeps stopping the ball every time he touches it. Play your role. You're like number 4 in the team right now. Like, let's relax in the ISOs. Matisse Thybulle wasn't defended at times, sagged off him. Doc Rivers, you got to figure that out. There was only 31 pick and rolls last night by James Harden run, 31 of them. Only 3 times did they bring Seth Curry into that screen using Thybulle. And all year long, now for 2 years, really, Doc Rivers has seen teams attack Seth Curry. They do it 3 times last night with James Harden. It just doesn't make any sense. It felt like, to me, the Nets looked like a team that had a full game plan. Steve Nash and that coaching staff came in with a plan. Doc Rivers and that coaching staff didn't. Brooklyn Stars, more important than anything else, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, they come to the court hungry for blood. Whereas James Harden, it just seemed to me that he was like in a coma last night. Andre Drummond and Seth Curry, both of them came back with more heart and hustle and focus than James Harden did for Philadelphia. And as I said, 31 pick and rolls, didn't bring Seth Curry in more than a couple of times. To me, it just seemed like Philadelphia was unprepared. But more than anything else, what a major disappointment from Harden and Embiid. It just felt like they came out flat, just hunting for fouls, not playing their game. What an odd game, but it should put all of Philadelphia on notice so that Brooklyn, even without Ben Simmons, they have a formula for success against you.
Do you believe in the it's just one game trope?
I mean, it's always just one game in the regular season. Even like within a playoff series, if you lose and by 30 points, it's still just one game. Like, you can still win a series losing by 30 in a game. You can go down 0-2 and everybody can bury you. I'm talking about the Bucks here. And then you can come back and win the series. The Nets found that out. It can happen. So, yes, it's just one game. But when I say the Sixers should be on notice, I'm talking about all of it collectively. Like I said, stopping the ball with Tobias Harris, the lack of what felt like a lack of game planning and targeting the weakest defender on the floor. It just felt strange. But with that said, though, I'm talking about the Philly side. You also have to give Brooklyn credit. Kyrie Irving he scores 50-plus points the other night. Last night, Thursday, he's going off on defense, playing harder than ever, fighting through screens, staying in his stance, staying seated, really was locked in. You could tell he came in determined, like, I'm stopping James Harden, and he did. He gave him hell. And Kyrie Irving has a reputation as like a lazy, subpar defender who doesn't try hard. Well, that's because he doesn't try until the playoffs or in big games. We saw a preview of what the Nets are going to look like on a night in, night out basis in the postseason when they are game planning and they come with a strategy and when the players have reason to go 150%. And that is also a reason for optimism on the Brooklyn side of things. Since if you get Ben Simmons back and you're plugging him into the Bruce Brown role, the Blake Griffin minutes, and you're getting Ben Simmons doing all of that stuff.
Along with that.
Yes, this is why I thought the trade was mutually beneficial for both teams before it even happened. We were just getting rumors. I'm like, this could be great for both teams. And we get a rivalry out of it. It just so happened the first game was a blowout.
Yep. This is the moment for Harden to step up and validate bailing on that team. If you are the guy that bailed on that team, that feigned injury, that stopped playing hard for them, and you got what you wanted. You ended up in the place that you wanted. This is now, that to me, that's not one game. That is, everybody was built up for this. I think Kevin Harlan was saying, even if you sat at the very top of the rafters last night, it was a couple $100 to get in that thing. I mean, there was all anticipation. We all had this game circled. And this was the proving ground. This was I know I bailed on you. Yeah, I didn't want to be a part of that. But now you're going to see why I didn't want to be a part of that. Because I'm now with Joel Embiid. I'm going to beat your ass. And instead, just threw up an absolute clinker. Just a nothing. Nothing. What, 11 points? 3 for 17 or some crap?
And he just looked lost, too. I mean, right from the first possession when he turned the ball over for Philadelphia, it just seemed like he was just completely out of rhythm the entire night. And at times, it was just self-inflicted. It's just very strange how that can happen.
I don't know, man. I looked at that game, and I'm thinking, you got your ass beat by 30 points on your home court, and that's without Ben Simmons. There's no question that last night made me feel differently about Brooklyn, because I thought, okay, this is high stakes. This is a motivated, this should be no lack of motivation for either of the teams. And let's see. And the way they came out there, you think about that in terms of the playoffs. What happens when you do have that laser-like focus that teams do? When you feel like this is more than just your regular run-of-the-mill regular season game. And that's what made me think about Brooklyn differently. I watched that and went, holy shit. When they get Ben Simmons, this is a big problem for everybody. And the other thing, obviously, is you got all these good teams in the Eastern Conference. The playoffs are going to be absolutely unbelievable. When you have that amount of good teams, you're going to have long series. And if the series goes long, and as soon as you get to that do or die, I need it moment, at least test one for James Harden in the Philadelphia 76ers jersey was an F-. Can I count on you when it matters most? And you're not going to be able to get that feeling away until you do it. Until you do it when it matters most. And so I really thought that him running the stairs at the arena the other night was going to help with this, but I don't know. Maybe it tired him out.
I thought also one of the other things from last night's game, Maxey offensively 2 of 7, only 4 points. It was a disappointing night for him. We've talked about it sucks losing Seth Curry. I mean, you're going to do it to replace him with James Harden, but you saw the value of having Seth Curry replace Joe Harris in that Brooklyn offense in last night's game. We saw Seth Curry attack off the dribble out of isolation. We saw him run pick and roll. We saw Kevin Durant get trapped in the pick and roll, hit Nick Claxton, who has a target in Seth Curry in the corner, who's one of the best shooters in all of basketball. We saw him off ball. We've seen him in handoffs and every single action, and we're seeing the value of Seth Curry on offense for Brooklyn, because not having Joe Harris, granted, he couldn't shoot well in the postseason last year. The idea of Joe Harris at his best is critical for a team. You need to have knockdown shooting. And I think in last night's game, we saw a good example of what Seth Curry can be in the postseason for Brooklyn, especially there are certain occasions Max is going under screens. It blows my mind some of the game planning decisions that went into Philadelphia last night. I just don't get a lot of it.
Well, and on the Harris front, you're talking about how he wasn't able to make a ton of shots last year, but sometimes with guys like that, especially when the lion's share of the scoring is going to be dependent upon other guys, just having somebody that you have to honor 30 feet away from the basket gives those guys the requisite amount of space to operate. And so no matter whether Joe Harris is 0 for 1,000, nobody's leaving him. You're not leaving him open. And so just somebody that could space the floor like that, and Curry does fit that bill. To your point, Curry fits the bill of
he's 40,
you have to guard him.
44% from three in his entire career. He's one of the best shooters in all of basketball.
Yep. Unbelievable.
You can't leave that guy. You just can't. I mean, you could make the argument. Actually, I'm not even going to say it is an argument. It's not an argument. Seth Curry is a better player than Joe Harris. He's a more versatile player. Harris is the guy who is an elite off-ball shooter. He can move without the ball. He can cut. Seth Curry can do all of that, and he can run a pick and roll for you, and he can isolate. He can do stuff off the dribble without needing anybody to create or pass to him. He can score unassisted, whereas Harris is more, he feeds off of others, and that's not necessarily a knock against him. Every player is different. But Seth Curry just brings more to the table and makes Brooklyn a more dynamic half-court offense with the things they can do.
Oh, and give a lot of credit to Steve Nash. I know you're busting up Doc Rivers a little bit for that game plan, but on the other side, you get Seth Curry and Kyrie Irving out there, two smaller, slighter guards. You shouldn't be able to play the defense that they did last night. You shouldn't. Not with those two. That should be able to be targeted.
You got to give credit to Andre Drummond, too. Drummond's playing great basketball for Brooklyn, man. They needed a big. They really needed a big with size. And I'm impressed with what Drummond's done. I really am. Like, he's had his ups and downs. People think he's a star and people say he's overrated. But he's really settled into, I think, a good place in his game. He was solid at coming off the bench for Philadelphia. He looks great in that starting lineup with the Nets. I don't know, man. Like, I think that Drummond acquisition will look back come playoff time when he's battling against an Embiid or a Giannis, and we're going to say, oh, yeah, he wasn't just a throw-in. He was actually a critical component of this.
Very good point, because with guys like Drummond, and this does happen, we saw it with Dwight for a minor amount of time during that Lakers year.
And Drummond's better now than Dwight was in that year in terms of talent.
It's just hard to recalibrate, especially dependent upon what the guys get paid. If you think of him as a role player, he's outstanding. Like that, and that's what he's suited to be, and that's what he is. He's not a guy that's going to be ever leading the team in field goal attempts. He's going to be out there. He's going to be rebounding. He's going to be a big body. The guy has always been able to rebound. And he's not going to have the ball a ton. And so just play the role. And if you recalibrate and think of him like that, really good role-playing center. Yeah. Really good role-playing center. He's just he's not a star.
No.
And if he is a star, your team's going to stink.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens once Simmons returns, how they work these lineups out. Are we going to see Simmons just slide right into Bruce Brown's spot? And they roll with Simmons, Drummond, Durant, Irving, Curry. I wonder what the configuration is going to be. Or, the benefit for Steve Nash is with his group of bigs, Claxton, Drummond, Aldridge, Simmons, you could say sometimes he's a big in the half court on offense a lot of the time. He has so many different combinations of guys that he can play. And by the way, Kevin Durant's like 7 feet tall. So you can play so many different lineup combinations that change the complexion of what your team is, whether it's we're switching every screen or whether it's we're going to play drop coverage like they did a lot of the time last night against Philadelphia's pick and rolls. They could just play so many different styles. That to me, when I think about the Nets and what they can be in the postseason, if you get full-time Kyrie and if you get a fully healthy Ben Simmons, the flexibility and the range of options Steve Nash is going to have for his lineups, that could be a separator in a playoff series, regardless of the opponent you face. And that's something that I'm keeping in mind when it comes to, season's over, who's going to win the NBA Finals, is the amount of flexibility the Nets have.